Welcome to Live Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich with your host, me, David Ibarra, and our guest today is our past Congressman, Ben McAdams, and current candidate for the U.S. Congress for Utah. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, David. So great to be with you. Thanks for giving me a chance to come on.
Well, I want to talk about the beginning. You know, I met you a long, long time ago, Ben, and I'd like to talk a little bit about your history of growing up, what was your educational background, and then I want to start in with an internship in D.C.
Yeah. Well, I know where this is going, but yeah, let me tell you a little bit about. So I grew up in West Bountiful, Utah, which is a suburb just to the north of Salt Lake City. Grew up in a hardworking family. My mom was a school teacher and raised 6 kids, mostly on her own. My dad was in and out, sometimes employed, sometimes not employed, but our family knew a lot of financial insecurity growing up. I remember some of my earliest memories are the power being shut off because we hadn't paid the bills, or remember a couple of times that our home was in foreclosure and either the church or family came in to help bail us out and get us caught up in that. And I remember, really going through a lot of financial insecurity as a kid. I had my first job when I was 11 years old, working on the neighborhood farm. I have to say, I don't begrudge that at all. Just the character that I developed, working hard. And, I've had so many jobs since then, from repairing guitars to reading water meters to driving a forklift, and, just really worked hard to put myself through high school to help support the family through high school and then go to college. And so I went to the University of Utah. Studied there, usually worked 3 and 4 jobs to put myself through college. I'll tee you up for the question about the internship. So I decided about 3 years into college that I wanted to, I was working night and day and just going to class when I could, but I decided I wanted to get more out of college than just going into class, punching the card and leaving. I'd heard about this internship that you could do. That the University of Utah had internships in Washington, D.C. Now, I was a poor kid, right? I couldn't afford to not have a job and go and do some fluffy internship that didn't pay. So what I decided to do was I was going to work really hard that summer, the summer between my second and third year, save up money so that I could afford to do this internship. So I got my first job was I started at the airport. I was loading freight at the airport. So I'd get there at 6 a.m. and we were with one of the freightways, and the plane would come in and we'd load it up, and I'd work until the plane was loaded, which usually took us till about 9:30. I'd rush up to class at the University of Utah. I was in classes from 10 to noon. Then I rushed back downtown to the warehouse for Franklin Covey at the time. And I was picking stuff out of Franklin and packing them in the boxes that were shipping out. So I worked 5 days a week, noon to 4. And then I'd finish that shift and I'd drive up to Ogden, where I worked at the Freeport Center, driving a forklift and loading freight there. So I'd do that from about 6 to, I'd eat dinner, always in the car. Lunch and dinner were in the car. Drive up there, operate a forklift. We'd finish about 10 o'clock. I'd drive back home to West Bountiful, where I was the janitor at the movie theater. And we'd go in and clean up the shows after the movies ended. So I'd work.
I'm already tired.
I know, right? and that was my day. And I did that all summer, saved up a bunch of money so that I could do this internship. There's a big life lesson in there. And I was also able to go to school because I received Pell Grants and subsidized student loans and that. So that following year, right as I applied for the internship, I got this internship, and I also had applied for my Pell Grant. And I found out that I was denied my Pell Grant because the previous year I had earned too much money to get the grant. So all that money I'd saved for the internship was gone. And I had this moment where I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I made the decision to take out a student loan. Which I was loath to do, but I decided I believe in myself. I'm going to invest in myself. And, if that's what it takes to have this experience that I really wanted, I'm going to do it.
Good. So you got an internship where?
I got an internship in the White House. I hadn't told anybody I applied. It felt like somebody from my background didn't deserve that type of an internship. So I didn't tell anybody I applied, and I had gotten an internship in the White House. And the
internship, where were you assigned? What did you do? What was the experience that you were going to have?
Yeah, well, I was going to let you tell the story, but I'll tell it. I got an internship. I was in the White House press office, actually. And when I got there, people there were so generous. And I was just some scrappy little kid who didn't think I deserved to be there. And there was a particular individual that took me under his wing by the name of Mickey Ibarra, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs in the White House. He had Utah ties, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that somebody from Utah would be here in the White House. And Mickey invited me and a few other interns to his office for lunch. And then that started this relationship where throughout the course of my 4-month internship, he was always there to give advice. I still remember what he told me is the first time I'd heard this advice. It's a common saying, but it says 90% of success in life is just showing up. And Mickey said, Ben, you have to show up, and you will succeed. And I remember that. And Mickey was the type of mentor that, really invested in people. He, I felt special. I think I was special, but Mickey has this relationship with dozens of people that he's so generous with his time.
I believe that Mickey has had 22, I may be wrong, but I think it's 22 of the Hinckley Institute interns at his practice at the Ibarra Strategy Group and the Latino Leaders Network that he does today. But
that he went on to do after leaving the White House.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I hope your listeners know, but Mickey Ibarra is the brother of David Ibarra, our host today. And it was through Mickey that I met David. And just found you to be the same, so willing to be a mentor, to be an advisor, and somebody that people look up to.
Ben, it's just it is. All of us have these obstacles to overcome, and I like to look at it. An obstacle is simply an adjustment period, because it's there. You look for the greater good, the benefit that you're going to gain, and it's always there. And if you hadn't experienced what you did growing up, and me and Mickey being raised in Utah foster care, and a similar experience to just simply not feeling like you're on the outside looking in, you wouldn't be able to have gained the gift of just feeling it, seeing it in others. And there are so many others that feel like no one's listening to them.
Yeah. And in my time as mayor and as a member of Congress, I've had the opportunity to meet these people who have interned in Mickey's office. I'm now an old guy, so now I'm that guy who feels like I need to pay it forward because of what I've benefited. But I've seen these people who have come through and been mentors of yours or of Mickey's, and seen them go out into the world and start contributing and making a difference. And I'll tell you what mattered to me was, first of all, seeing somebody who had it much harder than I did. You and Mickey, and I know your childhood experience, and really what you both did. Through hard work, through vision and commitment, but also there were people there to help to open the doors for you. But seeing somebody who had it hard, I thought I had it hard. People who had it harder than me, and that success is attainable. That's why it matters so much that people see, being a senior advisor to the President of the United States in the White House. You can come from normal circumstances and achieve these heights. You can achieve success and prosperity and that. And seeing people who have done that made me believe that I could do it too.
Well, I tell you just a short story. My father went to visit Mickey at the White House, as I did on about 8 occasions. And when he was there in the White House, President Clinton came to introduce himself. Wow. And he came and started to talk to my father. And when my father went to respond, he couldn't speak.
Yeah,
he could not speak. And the president understood that, reached and put his hand on my dad's shoulder and said, Mr. Ibarra, I want to thank you for what you did in raising Mickey, because Mickey's doing a great job for me. And everyone likes Mickey, even the people that don't like me like Mickey. My dad left that meeting, and to anybody that would listen, the president called me sir.
Oh, yeah.
And the success stories that we've had in our past, we seem to be in a cynical time period today where you gain success, and there are a certain part of our society now that are angry about anybody who's had some success. Yeah. But one of the things that excites me about you and your candidacy for returning to Congress is what we're going to talk about next. You mentioned mayor. You mentioned congressman. We mentioned you went to school, and I believe you graduated and became an attorney.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the things that you've done, because here I think it's so important to realize anybody that you want to vote for to represent you should come with the experience of being able to do, not just talk. We're in a noise world right now instead of a problem-solving world. Tell us a little bit about what came after college, and obviously you went to law school. And tell us about
that. So
I
went to law school. I loved law school. I graduated from law school, went to a law firm. I have to say, I did not love practicing law, which is true. I think most people say that. Now, so I practiced law for about 4 years, and then I had an opportunity. I was practicing law. I've practiced for a few years in New York City, moved back home to Salt Lake City where I was practicing law, and a friend of mine, someone who I'd interned for in the state legislature, Ralph Becker, was elected mayor of Salt Lake City. And he asked me to come and work for him to do intergovernmental affairs. And I took the job and went home and told my wife, I said, look, I just got offered a job by the mayor to come and do intergovernmental affairs. And I said, yes. And she said, she knew that I wasn't happy practicing law. She says, that's great. What does it pay? Which, of course, every spouse should ask. And I was like, I didn't ask. So if that tells you what I thought about. And so, my wife likes to say that I've never been offered a pay cut that I didn't take. But, I think there's something about having satisfaction in the job that you do.
Certainly.
So I went to work for Salt Lake City doing intergovernmental affairs. Salt Lake City is a deep blue city in a very red state. If you want to get anything done, you've got to learn to work across the aisle. And so I think that was kind of my proving ground of learning to represent my viewpoints and the mayor's viewpoints in that time, but do it in a way that built coalitions, not built enemies, right? And so we were able to get the legislature to support some really critical things for Salt Lake City at the time.
It is so important here is that, Salt Lake, while it's blue, it's the capital city of the state of Utah.
Economic
we are part
hub
of Utah.
Yeah.
And Utah should recognize, and I believe does, that this is the capital city, and we should get along. We should get along on problems or problems. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, but I like to tell my friends that will listen to me, beware of any politicians that's theme is I will fight for you.
Yeah.
We are in a mess right now where we need to be on this team or that team. I still am proudly will say I vote 60% for the party I belong to, the Democratic Party. I am proudly a center-left on social issues, a center-right probably on business. I want to get something done. And we're not doing that right now. The left is fighting, the right is fighting, and I think that probably talks a little bit about why you're running for Congress.
Yeah, it does. I mean, so in all of my public service, I was in the state Senate when there were 5 Democrats and 24 Republicans. I passed 15, 20 bills that sec because I stood up and I stood my ground and I represented my district and represented the viewpoints of the people who elected me. But I did it in a way that I didn't make enemies. Then I could turn around and say, okay, now here's a different issue that we're not opposed on, and let's work on it and pass legislation.
Right.
As a mayor, I was a mayor where I had a Republican council. I'm the Democratic mayor. We worked together. We disagreed, sure.
And how long were you county mayor of Salt Lake?
6 years. I was mayor for 6 years. We got a lot of stuff done. We had our disagreements. Politics is about disagreeing, but it's about disagreeing constructively with the goal of getting something done. Then I was elected to Congress, but just a little bit of a side story.
Then I was just elected to Congress.
Then Congress, Well, I do think, I will say honestly, the job that I think was most consequential, where I got the most done, that I'm most proud of, was mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah. People think Congress, prestigious, national government. Mayor is where I really, my heart, that was my favorite job. And my heart's with mayor because I just think you're able to impact people's lives for the better.
Certainly. There is no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But now, since you bring up mayor, or we're talking to us about mayor right now, you did something really, really what many would consider to be a little strange, in that when you wanted to understand the homelessness issue, you decided that you had to experience it instead of just trying to understand it. So I'm told that you went and slept in the street.
I did.
Tell me about that.
That can be a hard thing to talk about, but I'll tell you about that. We had been working on one of the things the challenges that our community was facing was rampant homelessness. It coincided with an opioid crisis in the community. We had open air drug markets, people living and sleeping on the streets, and so as mayor, I formed a task force to develop solutions. What are we going to do to address these challenges? And we spent about a year studying our homeless services system and coming up with recommendations. We went to the legislature and said, we need to invest in transforming the system. I had developed a relationship with the Speaker of the House, conservative, Trumpy Republican, and we became good friends. We disagreed about a lot. But we also, and we would have long phone calls late at night, just arguing back and forth, but it would always end in a path forward.
Right.
So anyway, we had developed these recommendations, and we went to the legislature and we asked for funding. We were asking for $30 million to invest in this program. And the speaker, I'm going to say now, quote unquote friend, called me to his office and he said, and we had a great coalition to advocate for this, from churches to business leaders to philanthropists. Everybody was up there. And he's like, okay, Mayor, I'm going to give you your $30 million, but it's going to come with a string attached. And he said, we're going to write into the legislation that you have to personally be the person to identify the site of this new homeless facility that you want so badly. Now, that's not easy to do.
Right.
And I said, okay, I'll do it. This is important enough to me that I'm willing to put it all on the line and do it. So we went out, and over the course of and he actually made the deadline of March 30th that we had to have this done by. So this was middle of February. I had 6 weeks to find a location for a new homeless shelter. Wow. So we went out, we found 10 sites. We then said, I said, I'm committed to a public process. So we're going to do town hall meetings around each site to gather information from the community about what might work and what might not work. So for a month, we went out and did these town hall meetings, and we had thousands of people showing up. Yeah. You can Google it and just see the images. Thousands of people showing up, yelling, protesting. One such meeting was in Draper that I sat on a stage for 5 hours and got yelled at. And look, I understand people see a broken homeless services system. We were talking about fixing it, but they're concerned, and people's worth is in their homes, and they're worried about what it'll be their property value. So I understand all of those concerns, but it was my job as mayor to find a solution and to listen to people even if they were mad. So at the end of this process, we had a few days left for the recommendation, and I looked at it and I'm like, I thought I had 10 perfect solutions. And after hearing from the public, I'm like, I have a handful that just don't work for things that I didn't. It's just why you listen to the public, and a few that are work, but they're all flawed. And I'm like, but the one thing I haven't seen is firsthand. I need to understand the system. We spent a year studying academically. I need to see it firsthand. So I left my office on a Friday afternoon, changed into jeans and a hoodie, and left everything behind, my wallet, my phone, and walked downtown to our homeless shelter. I spent the first night sleeping on the street. I went and saw the services, incognito, experienced the services. Second night, I decided to sleep in the shelter. I wanted to understand why, understand the situation that we were trying to address. Slept in the shelter, and it was a life-changing experience. I didn't tell anybody about it. It was, I didn't want people to feel like, with just 48 hours of experience, 2 days and 3 days and 2 nights, that I knew what it was like. So I didn't tell anybody about it. And actually, it didn't come out for about 6 months. When 6 months later, I was talking to some providers about the reforms that we were moving forward with. And I said, we've got to do something about the rampant drug dealing and drug use in the shelter. And they said, well, there aren't drugs in the shelter because we don't allow them. And I said, well, wait a minute. And, told about my experience that I'd seen firsthand, that there are problems and I've seen it. And that from there, it kind of leaked out. But, from that experience, I don't know what it's like to be homeless. I remember, though, laying on the top bunk of my bed that night and thinking about what I had seen over the last couple of days, hearing, fights and smelling substances being consumed in the shelter, and thinking, like, I came here because I wanted to understand it, and almost feeling like a failure. Like, I'm not going to understand this.
Right.
But I did also realize that, it wasn't about me. In that moment, it wasn't about me. It was about people in the shelter and the homeless services system that are suffering, and I had the ability to do something about it.
And the fact of the matter is that in the homelessness issue that we have, and you can rename it, it doesn't solve it to rename it, but it is people are in crisis, and we can't forget that we have to do something to help somebody, whether they've chosen to take fentanyl, whether they've have some mental issues. If we don't intervene, we are not being what it means to be Utah.
That's right. Not humane. It's not compassionate to do nothing.
It's not humane. But right now I want to take a moment for our sponsors. Yes, our kids can. We'll be right back.
Imagine if you could have learned the principles of success as a child. At Yes, Our Kids Can, we believe it's never too early to teach our children how to achieve their full potential. The purposeful tools of Yes, Our Kids Can are designed to teach resilience, self-efficacy, problem solving, character building, and life planning. You can help your child develop the skills needed for a successful and independent adult life. All you have to do is enroll your child today.
Well, now we're back. How about those cartoons? How about Senior Lionel? And we've got 11 cartoon series. We have 22 games to play on your phone. And we have ebooks. Man, how about teaching kids great principles from their earliest thoughts? I highly recommend it. Ben, let's continue with, you went through being mayor, and then what caused you to want to think about the United States Congress?
You know, I loved my job as mayor, and I started looking at the country. I was worried about the direction our country was heading in. You know, going back to, I talked about my childhood and growing up, and our family didn't have a lot, but I'll tell you what we did have. I knew that if I worked hard, that if I sacrificed, that if I deferred gratification, you know, so I could get a college degree, and I could, that I would have the chance to buy a home, that I'd have a chance to have success and to provide for my family, that my kids wouldn't know the financial insecurity that I knew, that they would have food on the table. And what worries me now, as I'm a dad, I have 4 kids, I don't know that the same world exists for them. They work hard, and they have to work harder than ever, but it feels like, you know, home ownership is out of reach for these kids. Right. That, you know, you take out student loans. I knew I'd be able to get a higher income and pay my student loans back. I don't know that my kids know that, right? I don't know that that world exists today. So while I love being mayor, because you get in, on the ground level, you see the impact. In Congress, you know, our country is sick, I think. And our country needs people. And it's political division for sure, and partisanship, but our economic system feels broken. That, you know, I just don't know that my kids' generation has that assurance that if they work hard, there's that reward, and sacrifice today, that there's that reward at the other end. We have to fix this country if we're going to, and we have to bring back to life the American dream so that people know. You know, I have a tendency, like I said, I vote for leaders, and while I'm a Democrat, I still vote about 60-40. And I tell you, I met a guy who came and talked to me, called and came and talked to me, and I had one of the greatest conversation, and that is Senator Curtis. And here he is, a Republican, but we could talk about the problems. We don't have to talk about who's the president, who's not. I have a great deal of respect for the office of the president. And we're going to have presidents come and go, but it's us who make this country great. And I tell you what, he's a problem solver. And I viewed you, while you were in Congress, as being a problem solver, not a grandstander, not a I will fight for you. Why are we fighting instead of solving? Well, first of all, I'll tell you about Senator Curtis and what makes him a great senator. He was a mayor first. Yes. And mayors, true. You don't have the opportunity. And I'll say something that he was that
before that made him great. He was a businessman first, and then a mayor second.
Look, business, mayor, you don't have the luxury.
solver.
You have to solve problems. You don't have the luxury of gridlock. You just have to get it
right
done.
here. I want to just insert: whoever is elected to the next congressman of the state of Utah, I would suggest that every voter look: have they accomplished something? We've got far too many people running about just screaming, yelling, and wanting the division. Let's pick people that are problem solvers and have a history of working for others.
You know, there was a race it was after I left Congress. So I ran for Congress. I lost my reelection for Congress. I'm a Democrat Utah's a very conservative state.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I represented the most Republican district in the country, won by a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it wasn't really a surprise that I lost my reelection. Mm-hmm. But after that, I was supporting a candidate who was more conservative than me. And I took a lot of flack from Democrats who thought, like, why are we supporting this guy, Evan McMullen, who is more conservative? And, one of the lines that stuck with me is somebody said, it would be better to lose than to compromise and support somebody who's more conservative than who wasn't a Democrat, And that stuck with me because that is a pretty elitist position. Because I'll tell you who would not say it's better to lose. My sister's a type 1 diabetic, which is part of the reason our family had financial insecurity. If you can't afford insulin, you'd rather compromise and have somebody who can help you afford the cost of insulin, a dreamer. Immigrant who's looking for a pathway to citizenship. Try and tell that person it's better to lose than to compromise. It is the epitome of elitism to say, I'm going to double down on my partisanship. I'm going to fight. I'm not going to give an inch, because most people in society don't have the luxury of not getting something done. So what I look for in a leader is not that somebody agrees with me 100% of the time, because not even my wife agrees with me 100% of the time, right?
I bet not.
Yeah. I wish she would, but she doesn't. What I look for is somebody who cares so much about getting something done that they're willing to listen to people who disagree with them. They're willing to meet in the middle, and they're willing to find a pragmatic approach to getting something done that's going to provide that open door, that opportunity, that belief in the American dream, that so my kids can afford a home, so my kids can have access to health care, so they can have the things that I had access to if I worked hard.
Well, I once heard Ronald Reagan say, we're the only country in the world where you can come here from somewhere else and become an American and call yourself an American. Yeah. And we need to get back. Immigration has not been a bad thing. We are all immigrants. Yeah. Every one of us are immigrants. And that's what made our country strong. So what are your goals for this new journey you're on to become the Congress representative for our district? Yeah,
I am focused on, I want my kids and my kids' generation to be able to enjoy the opportunities that I had. I think a little hard work is good for people. And it's good for my kids, but I want them to know that hard work has a reward. Mm-hmm. It's not just hard work and to fall behind more slowly, right? So look, I think expanding access to quality healthcare that's affordable, that's a basic necessity of life, and we're failing on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Housing, my kids, I don't know that my kids will ever be able to buy a home.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the work that I've been doing the last few years that I've been out of Congress has been on housing and housing affordability. And so I have ideas for how, Congress can support the great work that's being done by the private sector in cities and counties. I actually don't think a lot of answers come out of Washington, but we can enable answers to come out of cities and counties and our mayors and our business leaders and entrepreneurs to find solutions to housing and housing affordability. I think the cost of food, now I feel the pain at the grocery store. I can afford it. I'm lucky and happy about that. But if it's hitting me, imagine how it's hitting people who are living paycheck to paycheck.
I tell you, Ben, I might not have gotten algebra and calculus, but I get arithmetic.
Yeah.
I understand when I'm paying more for the things I used to pay less for a year ago.
Yeah.
Don't tell me eggs are less. Don't tell me milk is less. Don't tell me that people, when they look at their cart and they're quietly using a calculator to see whether they've got enough in their debit card to eat right. we can do better than that.
People are struggling.
What else are you looking at tackling that needs to be?
Washington is broken, and I want to be. I hope it's not forever broken. We're in a moment right now that really worries me. I've never been more worried about the state of our country, the direction we're heading in, than I am right now. Partisanship, division, the fighting that we see there. We've got to, I think we've seen far enough down this road that we need to ask ourselves, do we want to continue down this road, or are we going to turn back?
We have to turn back.
And I want to be part of turning back.
Well, why do you think it is that we haven't handled comprehensive immigration laws up to this point? I mean, we've had the solution several times, but it just doesn't happen.
I have voted for legislation before. I think that the political industrial complex doesn't like solutions. It's better to keep the voters, for some people, it's better to keep the voters angry and divided than solving problems. How many news stories have you seen in the last year about cars that didn't crash or airplanes that didn't crash? Mm-hmm. It's the train wreck, the plane crash that drives the headlines. So if we can keep people mad and angry, that is political opportunity. And I think both sides do it. I don't think it's equal. Right now we are in a scary times where I think this upping the ante by each side is out of control. But I'm super concerned about what I'm seeing from President Trump and what's happening in our country right now. I don't think the answer is to continue to up the ante tit for tat. Right. But we need to send people to Congress who are going to turn it around.
And I might add, as a Democrat, I'm super concerned about the Democratic left. I'm super concerned about them. As we continue to see homelessness rise to a level that is just purely unacceptable. And I believe a lot of the fault belongs with our left part of our party. But with that, we still have hope for tomorrow, and I always try to remind myself the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, was written not saying we were that. It was saying that is the beacon we should journey to become, and we've got to start the journey of making a better version of ourselves than the last for our next generation, and we can do that. I want to close in making a comment. Again, look, Ben, you've got the experience in business, law, leadership, getting things done, homelessness, involved in all components. Wow. You're a pretty darn good selection, I would say. Good choice.
David. Thank you.
And in closing, I want to give you a copy of my book, Live Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich. And thank you so much.
Thank you for always being such a great friend and mentor.
Thank you.
Yeah.